Hey, this is Nick Legamaro with Cash for Homes America. I'm super excited. I got Abrina here with us today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the cash for equity, or sometimes we call it EPP. And what I want to really focus on today is what this is, what this means to the seller, and if there's have an agent involved, what that means for the agent. Because in the creative financing space, which is another creative financing deal type structuring, they get to be a little complex sometimes. And it's not that we just need to explain it and what that means. So at the end of the day, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the seller has complete understanding of the program and what they're doing, because we do not like not to be transparent. We also want to make sure that we're all on the same page, because the cool thing about the cash for equity of the EPP is that there's a lot of cash that can be earned in the future by staying in these deals. We have these, I love this picture behind us because there's all these houses, and they all look the same, but what's different about each one of these is that they all have different debt on them. Meaning this one might have a 4% mortgage, this one might have an 8% mortgage, this one over here might have a 2% mortgage interest rate. That's what we're interested in. We're interested in the debt and leveraging the debt moving forward, not necessarily the house itself. So let's just talk about some of the things here. And the one questions that I get asked all the time, well, why don't I just sell my house traditionally, right?
Sure.
And we know that is not always the easiest thing to do. They might need repairs on a property, which we don't care about. They might already be on the market, and they may have been on the market for some period of time. So let's just talk about like what the advantages and maybe even some of the disadvantages of participating in this equity program.
Yeah. So you can certainly sell on market. This is essentially, EPP is another tool in your tool belt. So for homeowners that have, a 4% or under interest rate, up to $250,000 in equity that are already looking to sell, 9.5 out of 10 times, this offer is going to be more beneficial for them, simply because they keep 30 to 35% of future appreciation, in addition to getting up to 100% of their equity, paid out up front, just like if they sold traditionally, of course.
That's a great point, because I've been in the creative financing space for a long time. We do a lot of sub-2 and seller financing, and that's the big buzzword in the industry, because there was a lot of cheap interest rates coming out of COVID. And what I know is that there's been appreciation in houses as well. And with appreciation, there's equity. And what happens a lot of times when people try to come in and acquire creatively, they can't make that large payment towards the equity to a seller, and they want the seller sometimes to carry back that equity in the form of another note, which is great. We call it a hybrid model. This is different because we're actually going to cash out the equity position today. So a seller will get cash now, today, for the majority of the equity they have in it, then stay in as a partner in this as we go into the future and have more appreciation and more value in money's gained. So why would a seller want to do that, number one? And what are we going to do with the property if we're going to acquire? We're going to keep it ourselves, or we have hedge fund partners that may be interested in this as well. So explain why a seller would be interested in this.
Yeah, why the seller would be interested is really a question of why are they looking to sell? Probably because they need to get out of this house into another, and they need access to this cash to do it. Or maybe they're facing financial troubles, or maybe they're, a landlord with 10 properties. This one happens to be sitting vacant. They're getting older, or they're just not really interested in being a landlord. We all know being a landlord is a full-time job.
It is not passive, that's for sure. So this is not really, is this a loan?
No.
Are we explain what the seller, what happens. We do the transaction today. We give the seller $50,000 for their equity position on a $300,000 mortgage with a 3% interest rate. What happens after today?
Yeah, it's not a loan. It's not a sale. It's more so a partnership. Just like if the homeowner were to sell traditionally, receive their equity, and wipe their hands clean and move on to the next chapter of their life, they're going to do that with EPP. Only difference is they technically didn't sell the home. So they have 30% to 35% of future appreciation in the property when they do choose to sell after that 5-year hold.
Which is a really important part, because, a lot of people us included, we
Yeah.
like to acquire subject to the existing debt.
Right.
When we don't have to do that, which is still a viable option in some situations, but if this fits better for the seller for different reasons, they're still on title, right? They're still
Oh,
on
yeah.
title. So there is no due on sale clause.
0% chance of due on sale clause
Because
being
you're still the
called.
owner of the
Yeah,
property.
exactly.
But the other side of it is this is not for a seller that wants to continue to stay in the house. Is that correct?
Right. So what the fund will do is they'll come in and they'll manage the tenants' turnover, upkeep, make the monthly mortgage payments, and they'll just have long-term rentals that they continuously recycle and keep to manage until they end up selling the property, until the seller decides that they want to sell the property. So yeah, this isn't a situation where the seller gets to stay in the property and all that. This is something where the sellers want to sell. They need to move regardless. They need access to their equity. And if they fall in the niche group of sellers who do qualify for the program, I mean, it's pretty much a no-brainer offer at that point.
So what happens if sometimes properties there's an agent involved, right?
Sure,
Sometimes,
yeah.
or they want to consult an agent. How does an agent typically? Because it's not a sale,
Right.
but we still want to make sure if there is an agent involved that they get compensated because
Yeah.
they have a listing agreement with the seller, and we want to make sure that everybody is compensated accordingly. How do we typically handle those situations?
Yeah, if they already have an agreement and it's already listed with the agent, then they will still get compensated based on their commission agreement without getting too technical. But if it's just more so their seller and it's a referral, they'll get a referral compensation. Absolutely. Yeah.
How long does this usually take? Like if we agree to go do this, and I'll walk through the process here in a second, but let's just say we have a seller that goes, yes, this makes sense to me. Okay.
Right.
There's a couple things we obviously need to have. The first thing we must have is a mortgage statement.
Yes.
We have to have a copy of the most current mortgage statement because like we're saying, we're leveraging the debt. The debt is the unpaid balance on the mortgage, right?
Right.
With the interest rate, the term, the lender itself. We need to know that so we can provide the right cash payout today
Yep.
and then move forward from there. So what other things that do we need to do moving forward, and how long does it typically take to get this cash to the seller, take control of the property, assuming that there's no delays in the process?
Yeah, it can take as quick as 14 business days, and it could take as long as a couple months. It's really the seller's timeline, but the fastest is usually anywhere from 9 to 14 business days.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if I'm the homeowner still and I'm selling this and I'm
Right.
still leaving the mortgage in place, I have a couple questions. One, who's responsible for all the repairs and maintenance and after we finish this transaction?
Yeah. The fund is responsible for any financial payment responsibility, anything like that. So, for example, if you guys move forward, if a seller does this transaction and the day after the house burns down, the fund takes on 100% of that responsibility. Every renter turnover, mortgage payment, if a refrigerator breaks, essentially glorified property managers in that sense, where the seller will never receive as much as a phone call unless that's something they'd like to be in the know of. Act of God with the roof, anything of that nature, the fund takes care of.
Great. So, and with that said, if they're not, what happens? So I'm the seller. We agree to this. I get my equity payout. I wait 5 years, 7 years, 10 years for appreciation.
Right.
I get a future. I call it cash now and cash later. Cash now is pretty much the same equity position, but how does the cash that I get today as the seller compare to what it would if I sold it traditionally?
Yeah, we have a tailored sheet that we send and we show each agent or seller in that case that's tailored to their property. It's hard to exactly say because every property is different, but typically, obviously, if there's an agent involved, commissions will still be paid out. There's going to be
But they were
less
going to pay
closing costs.
commissions regardless of
They're
if it was
gonna,
traditional,
yeah,
right?
yeah, they're paying commissions regardless. So it's more so pretty much anywhere from 90 cents to 95 cents to 96 cents or, above market value that the fund is willing to pay.
Yeah, from everything that I've seen up to this point in time, the seller usually gets more cash now than they would through a traditional sale.
Correct.
That's what I see. Plus, they get the kicker, the cash later portion of it,
Right.
which is the 35%, give or take,
Yeah.
of the equity payout over those 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it is.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that can, I
This
mean,
is
the
the
longer
value.
you hold it, the bigger the payout, right? Depending on the value of the
Right.
house, you could get a $500,000 payout in 10, 20 years.
Exactly.
It's crazy, yeah.
What happens to a seller when they want to, if they move forward with this program, and they decide they want to go buy another property?
Yeah, they can absolutely do that. This would be viewed as a rental property. So any debt to income, concerns that they might have, we have preferred lenders if there's ever an issue with that as well. Yeah.
And typically, what's going to happen to the property once we take control and possession of it? What are the fund going to do? What are our partners going to do with this property?
Yeah. Well, they're going to do an inspection before the final offer is presented to the seller. So that's already out of the way. Really, they're just going to get it renter ready and start to vet tenants and get a long-term renter in there.
And again, if something happens to the house under our control, it's going to be our responsibility.
Yep.
The seller is financially removed and has no responsibility for any of that stuff.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yep. Exactly.
All right, super. I don't have any other questions. Is there anything else that you can think of that a seller may be interested in?
No, nothing off the top of my head. I mean, for majority of families out there, it's very, very hard to keep a property as a rental property, get access to your equity, and go on and move on with your life. So to be able to have 30 to 35% of future appreciation in a property, for some families and individuals, it can be life-changing. So,
Well, and then here's the difference. Like if some people go, well, I don't just make this a rental property myself and wait
Right.
for the future. Well, they surely could.
Absolutely.
The difference is they don't get that cash now from the
Right.
equity that they have, because we call it debt equity, right?
Right.
The house is worth $300,000, but I owe $200,000 on the property. I got $100,000 of debt equity.
Right.
And it's very difficult to get out depending on what state you're in and what that looks like.
Yeah.
So this is an opportunity to cash out and leverage the existing debt that you put in place from your
Yeah.
credit, and the fact that I joke about it all the time. It's like Jesus can't go get a 3% mortgage right now, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, typical rates are much higher now. So we're going to leverage that, and we're going to hold it, and we're going to use it, and we're going to let it appreciate, and we're going to mutually share and reap the benefit of that appreciation over time with us internally as well as the seller.
yeah, and when you sell traditionally, that rate that you have that your neighbors might not have, that just goes to die. So why not leverage it? It's a beautiful thing. In terms of if the seller wants to turn the property into a rental, I mean, that's a full-time job. If the refrigerator breaks, do they have the reserves to be able to go ahead and replace that? And the properties don't necessarily, all of them that we purchase that the fund, moves forward with, they don't all cash flow. So that's not, if they're in it for the cash flow, great, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like that. So
Yeah, that's a great point, because some states are have very high property taxes, right?
yeah.
Texas.
Yeah.
So it's really hard in some of these locations to make them cash flow as a rental.
Right.
So that's not necessarily a concern for us, because
Yeah.
our game is the long-term play of the appreciation.
Exactly.
And the last thing I want to say is, look, this isn't our first rodeo. We've been doing this for a very long time. I've been in the creative financing space, real estate space, for well over 20, 25 years. I've personally have done almost 2,000 creative financing transactions. This is just a different version of something that we do, and it's a great program for sellers that really want to take their asset that they have. Their asset is the debt, is the interest rate on the note, not the house. I can't explain
Right.
that any clearer than that. So the house is the same as every other one on the street. What's different is 2.5%, 3.5%, 4% rates, and that's what we want to leverage and
Right.
materially participate in with the seller. So,
yeah, absolutely. I love it.
all right, me
Thanks
too.
for doing this.
Guys, just reach out to us. You have the contact information. If you have any other questions, we love to jump on a call. If this is something interest of you, make sure that we get a copy of the mortgage statement, and then we can give you what do we want to call that? A formal proposal?
It's
What's
called the preliminary offer. The formal offer and final one will come after the inspection.
right.
Yeah.
And if the seller discloses everything up to us up front,
No surprises. It's very
Yeah.
rare for something to change unless there's truly something the seller didn't disclose or they don't know about. Yeah.
But to that point, and this is the last thing I'll say,
Yeah.
we're not looking for the seller to do any repair. So we go do an inspection
No.
and go, oh, the water heater is on the last leg. We're
Right.
not looking to have the seller replace the water heater. We're just going to adjust the numbers accordingly. We'll take care of all the repairs, all the maintenance, everything that's required to get it rental ready so we can get the tenant in.
Yeah, and if you have a preliminary offer in front of you and something does come back that's, wasn't disclosed or the seller didn't know about, sometimes the fund will take up most of that cost anyways. So it really just depends.
Well, and at the end of the day, let us get them an offer.
Yeah,
Right? And
yeah.
then you can compare it to what it would be if you sold it traditionally.
Exactly.
That's the best thing to do.
Exactly.
Because this may be the best fit for you, and it may be the worst fit. And but with that offer, you can compare it to a cash transaction sale, create a financing, maybe a sub-2 or seller financing deal, or
Right.
the equity, the cash equity program that we have today.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for
Cool.
your time.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks.
Have a good day.